Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
AI isn't something sort of the future over the next hill. It's the present. It's already here, in Britain, changing lives. A chance to turbocharge growth, create the companies of the future, and radically improve our public services.
That was the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, speaking there. He's on a mission to turbocharge the country's AI growth. Can he succeed? Hello, you're listening to Bloomberg UK Politics. I'm Caroline Hepker.
And I'm Lizzy Burden. Welcome to the programme. Now, we've talked a lot about how the cost of UK debt is soaring, but Keir Starmer wants you to focus on something else, artificial intelligence. At least that's what's top of his agenda today. Taking on board recommendations from the tech entrepreneur Mark Clifford, the Prime Minister is launching his AI Opportunities Action Plan. And these proposals, Caroline, aim to turbocharge growth, boost living standards, and they include investment commitments in the UK from 3 tech companies. So we're going to dive into this during the programme. But my big question is, how feasible is it all?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially when the backdrop is so difficult, isn't it? In terms of the focus, you just can't escape the fact that the Chancellor's staring down the barrel of public spending cuts because the Office of Budget Responsibility, has been talking up the economic growth plans and possibilities for the UK, but a lot of investors are so dubious. And AI could be the sort of elixir that the UK economy needs. But remember that the AI bill was dropped from the King's Speech last year. And then the funding for this planned national computing project were also cancelled. So Keir Starmer wants to lean into AI, but is the industry convinced?
Well, joining us now with a rundown of the government's latest bid to leverage AI is Bloomberg's tech reporter Mark Bergen. Welcome to the studio, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
I feel a bit of deja vu here because you and I were both at that AI safety summit under Rishi Sunak. AI was something that the last government talked about a lot. It was one of Rishi Sunak's top priorities. So what's different under Keir Starmer when it comes to his plan for harnessing AI? Is it that he has a different balance in terms of the opportunities he sees versus the risks? What's new?
Yeah, certainly some of it is just language and political framing. I think this announcement is certainly devoid of concrete specifics. We had some funding commitments from those companies around most likely just building data centers. But what we had in the prior administration under Rishi Sunak were these big splashy numbers. I think it was a maybe close to £1 billion for semiconductors in the UK and a similar amount for quantum computing. And then we had this big supercomputing project. All of those, the future of many of those, even after this announcement this weekend, are still in doubt. And what we didn't see were specific commitments, kind of line items around something like building out semiconductors or building out quantum computing.
But we know that those are going to be hugely important. I mean, it's not just the UK talking about AI. So I suppose that the question is, if they can't pay for it, how are they going to deliver change or an increase in productivity? I mean, the data centers point is that that's the kind of backbone of AI. If you want to use it in a business, you need a data center.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that the announcements kind of fall into 3 buckets from what I see. One is just sort of what they call AI infrastructure, which is a bit jargon, but it's basically we're talking about data centers. They may be talking about semiconductors or sort of other things around that supply chain. The second is in this public services domain. There was Prime Minister had a op-ed in the FT that said AI can do everything from improve wait times at the NHS to plan your child's school curriculum to spotting potholes. And so this is very much their messaging is we are using AI for public good and public services. And the third, and this was also fairly vague, but certainly important, is retaining and attracting talent and making the UK a hub for AI, something that they've been criticized for a number of months since they've come in, Labour has, and is rightfully like they're kind of losing out to countries across Europe and the US and the Middle East.
But how do you even get over that hurdle? Because in the US, in Silicon Valley, they're dangling these whopping great salaries. Surely we just cannot compete on that. I was talking to a tech founder this morning who was saying, yeah, but the work that we do in the UK is more interesting. If I work in tech, I'm going to where the money's at.
I think that's right. I mean, there's a certain, the Middle East right now is providing these kind of clear lanes of visas, of tax-free living, of big salaries. And we haven't seen necessarily a big migration of talent, of AI or engineers moving to the Gulf. right? In some ways, there's the AI engineers who live in London like to live in London, right? Or
Like the football.
they're British, correct? Or the European, and I think that's been certainly one of the key attractions of the UK. That is an open question about retaining talent. We saw the same time, and I think the government has been pushing this. Obviously, we've seen commitments from Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, Anthropic, sort of all the big players. Mistral, the French company, said they're expanding their UK presence. So all these companies, at least on paper, are saying that they're expanding in the UK.
Mark, thank you so much for being with us this morning and just beginning our conversations then around AI. Bloomberg's tech reporter Mark Bergen. So with a little digest of what the Prime Minister's been talking about. I suppose, though, Lizzy, the real judges of the government's AI plan are going to be the business leaders who stand to reap the benefits but also have to make the investments. We spoke to a couple of industry leaders on Bloomberg Radio about this morning. They both say that planning is great, but action's key.
No plan provides comfort or discomfort. I think it's action. And there's a lot of promises in the plan. We think they are generally in the right direction. I think at Alex Partners, we believe it's all about the action.
For this government to really manage to excel in this space, I think it's going to be an implementation game. It's very easy to say, okay, we want to replicate OpenAI in Britain, but OpenAI's funding has been over 20 billion.
So that was Nari Singh, the executive partner and managing director at Alex Partners Consultancy, and Andrei Donescu, who is co-founder and CEO of logistics data firm Dexori, sharing their thoughts on the plan this morning.
So can the UK government actually put its money where its mouth is when it comes to AI? Joining us now with more is Hanah-Marie Darley, Director of Security and AI Strategy at Darktrace. Great to have you with us, Hanah-Marie. Good morning. I wonder, does this plan go far enough from Keir Starmer? Are you convinced that they're serious about growing the UK economy using artificial intelligence?
Good morning. I think they are. I think the plan that we see, the wide-ranging recommendations are ambitious, but I think they're absolutely in the right direction. And I think most of industry would recognise and say, yes, we agree with these principles. And I would absolutely echo the gentleman before who said, but it's implementation that is key. It's going to be action. It's going to be timetables. It's going to be security in those actions that are going to determine whether or not these really good set of principles are going to be effective for the UK.
And perhaps that's not surprising, given that most of the plans were drawn up by investor and, AI advocate Matt Clifford. Does the government need to put any money into AI? Does it actually need to fund any of this?
I think if it doesn't fund it, it won't reap all the benefits because it will always be third party. There is absolutely a wonderful track record in the UK of third party AI. My company is an example of that. There's a lot of investment in that space, but you certainly don't have as much control, you don't have as much ideation, whereas, being able to go through the new DSIP protocol, for example, and do some sort of a pilot with the NHS and do that in-house without having to go through a procurement process or a tender is going to mean that timetables can move up. And certainly, I don't think it's an either or. You always want government to partner with industry, but I think it's also good for government to kind of get their welly boots on and get stuck in as well alongside of industry as they try to build out those AI centres in the UK.
Hanah-Marie, we were just talking to our reporter Mark Bergen about the problem of attracting the world's best talent to the UK. How do you do it if you can't dangle great big salaries?
I think we have so many key ingredients. I think number one, we have, 4 of the top 10 universities in the world, and we've absolutely reaped the benefit of those brilliant institutions and the research. I think the other thing is it doesn't always have to be young people who are just starting out. There's a lot of mid-career transition opportunities that can be taken advantage of.
Surely they're more expensive.
I don't think they are, because you can learn so much even without certification programs. I mean, I myself studied psychology and politics, and I would now work for an AI company. There's absolutely a lot of pathways. You have to build them, but there's a lot of really good pathways. And I think also looking at the long-term investment of not just where do you want to live, but also what kind of work do you want to do, how do you want to do it, and can we make sure that there is enough good data built out that we can do some really innovative and cutting-edge research here in the UK.
OK, everyone talks about delivery. What does that mean to you? What does the government have to do quickly in order to capture AI to grow the UK economy and to take advantage of the benefits?
Security is absolutely the key pillar. For example, the upcoming Cybersecurity and Resilience Bill really offers an opportunity to safeguard the data and AI infrastructure that will be critical to an AI-enabled public sector, and also around building public trust and confidence in all of these AI measures. You really have to build in security by design at the front as you start to build these programs out, and not just the data centers themselves, but also the government programs, making sure that we're really good on cybersecurity baselines, and that we're really building out some good best practices rather than implementing them as we go or after the fact. Making sure that security is implemented in the beginning by design is definitely going to be key for these deliverables to be actioned well.
Do you feel like the government is consulting you enough? Do you feel like you're part of the conversation and the government's really taking on your advice as much as you'd like?
We do. We've been involved since the AI Safety Summit, and before we've gotten involved in the AI Safety Institute. I think there's a lot of really good programs, even through the NCSC and DCIT, that are really reaching out to industry. I think government knows that they can't do this by themselves, and I think they are really welcoming industry in. I think it's about how the rubber meets the road and the implementation of what that looks like. So, for example, in those data centers, are you consulting cybersecurity experts as you're selecting how you're going to go forward? Are you thinking about the compute cost, and are you thinking about renewable energy and talking to the energy industry, really making sure that you have the right expert in the right room?
Of course, your former CEO, Poppy Gustafsson, is actually on the inside now. She's Minister of State for Investment, now a Labour peer. Does that give you a bit of an inroad to the party?
She is. I wouldn't call her an inroad. I think she's happy to work with us and happy to work with other people. But I think also a lot of ministers are really keen to know more. I think every interaction I've had with Parliament is just people asking questions and wanting more information. So I think people are really hungry to know more. I think the difficult thing is that sometimes AI can be quite jargony, and we can also get caught on just talking about one kind of AI. AI is a massive spectrum. It's a whole toolkit of technology. And when used well, you can really get benefits, but when not understood properly or when not implemented with the right problem and kind of solution in mind, you can end up sort of putting a spanner in the works. So I think government really wants to educate themselves, and obviously, appointing people from industry to government is a fantastic way, again, to get the right expert in the right room, like Poppy.
The issue, though, is that if you look at the latest survey, for example, from Deloitte, more than half of CFOs surveyed want to cut costs. The priority for their businesses in the wake of the budget is to slash capex. Do you think that UK businesses have the capacity to take on board AI, to make those investments? I mean, many think that they'll have to take that money from hiring, for example.
I think they do. I think it's about strategically implementing them. So looking at where we can streamline positions and not necessarily take away jobs, but changing the tasks that are being done. So maybe you can hire someone at a graduate level instead of at a senior technical level, or maybe you can sort of change the requirements around what kind of background you need because you have AI workflows in place that will kind of streamline those tasks. I think some of it is, of course, we have to think about the budget. We can't go into AI adoption haphazardly and sort of clear the shelf. I think you have to choose targeted programs and targeted areas. But I think also that's really helpful from an organizational perspective, because you don't want to bite off more than you can chew. You want to take measured steps to success, so you can really look at the outputs and make sure that it's getting the right information in, getting the right information out, and that your workforce is adjusting well.
Hanah-Marie Darley, Director of Security and AI Strategy at Darktrace. Great to have you with us on the programme. So much to consider, Caroline, for the government as it tries to race towards economic growth. It's desperate for it, given the UK market turmoil, but also having to be careful when it comes to security as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I committed to learning more about the practical uses of AI at the start of this year, downloaded 4 or 5 AI tools to have a go myself to see what productivity improvements I could make.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that's it from us for today. Perhaps I'll report back on what it does for my productivity in months to come. If you like the programme, don't forget to subscribe and give it 5 stars so that other people can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
This episode was produced by Tiwa Adebayo and our audio engineer was Sean Guastamakia. I'm Lizzy Bergen.
And I'm Caroline Hepker. We'll be back with more tomorrow. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg UK Politics. Listen weekdays at noon on DAB Digital Radio in London.